When peach season is in full swing, this peach slab pie is the perfect crowd-pleasing way to use them. And if you've shied away from lattice crusts in the past because you thought they looked too difficult, now's the time to give it a try. I'll walk you through the process step by step to make an absolutely stunning pie. By the way, this lesson is from our Slab Pies to Feed a Crowd class, out now on ATK classes on the America's Test Kitchen app. In this class, you'll learn how to make and bake oversized rectangular pies in a sheet pan, so you can get all the fruity pie flavors you love in a format that serves up to 24 people. These pies are a great option for a barbecue, holiday party, or really any gathering. Not only will you learn how to make pie dough and filling, but you'll also pick up a variety of topping techniques, from a buttery streusel to a stunning yet simple lattice. Learn at your own pace and have fun while you do it. But first, let's make a peach slab pie. The first thing we need to do is prepare our pie dough. Now, I've already made our recipe for slab pie dough, and I've made it 2 times because it's a double crust pie. And you can check out Christy's step-by-step video in this class to learn how to make it. We're gonna start with our first 2 pieces of dough, and we wanna roll them into rectangles. So the first thing I wanna do is sprinkle some bench flour onto the counter. This is gonna help prevent our dough from sticking. Our doughs were well chilled, but I took them out and put them on the counter for about 10 minutes to help soften them up so we can roll them out easier. And we're gonna start with the base of our pie. And what we're looking for is a 16 by 11 inch rectangle. So I'm also gonna sprinkle a little bit of bench flour on top of our pie, and using my rolling pin, we're gonna slowly roll this out. Now, when you're getting started rolling out pie dough, something I like to do is take a rolling pin and just kind of give it a tap. This helps to jumpstart the rolling process. Now, for our first 2 pieces of dough, we're gonna roll them both out into a 16 by 11 inch rectangle. Rather than roll out one ginormous pie crust to fill the base of our rim baking sheet, we're gonna work with 2 pieces and connect them in the pan. Now, I'm just pressing the dough from the center outwards and also from the center back towards me. It's always easier to roll pie dough away from you rather than having to go side to side. So I just rotated the rectangle so that we can continue to push outward. And as I'm pushing the rolling pin outwards, I'm gonna push the rolling pin across the entire surface of the pie dough so that it doesn't get a little bit of a lip. You can see all those pieces of butter in our pie crust, which means it's gonna be super flaky and delicious. We're looking for a 16 by an 11 inch rectangle, which we're just about there. But you'll see as I'm rolling it out, you really want to make sure that you keep it in a nice rectangular shape so that it fits nice and snug in the rim baking sheet. So just take your time to try and square off the corners. You can use your hands a little bit to get the right shape. So now we're ready to transfer our first rectangle to our rim baking sheet. And to do so, I'm going to roll the dough across the top of my rolling pin. I have my rim baking sheet that I've lined with parchment paper, and now we will unroll the dough. Having a little lip of dough is totally fine because we're gonna fix this when we start to actually build the base to our pie. Now I'm gonna top our dough with the second piece of parchment, and we're gonna repeat the process and roll this second piece of pie dough into a 16 by 11 inch rectangle. Before we do that, I'm gonna take the other 2 pieces of pie dough and put them back into the fridge because my kitchen's a little warm and I don't want them to get too soft. So now we can roll out our second piece of dough. And we're gonna follow the same process. So I'm gonna flour our counter to prevent stickage, flour the top of the dough, and get rolling. We have our second piece of pie dough rolled out to our 16 by 11 inch rectangle. So now we can transfer this to the sheet pan with our first dough. So again, fold the dough on top of our rolling pin, pushing it away from me. Now I'll grab our sheet pan and unroll it. The parchment between the 2 pieces of dough is going to make sure that they don't stick together. Now the next thing I want to do is cover our pie dough with plastic wrap. I'm going to put this in the refrigerator for the dough to chill for 10 minutes. And while I'm in there, I'm going to grab the other 2 pieces of dough so we can roll out our top crust. We just want to chill the bottom dough long enough so that it's firm but still pliable. Now we're going to work on our top crust, which is going to be our lattice. So we're going to roll these a little bit differently than we rolled the base of our pie. I'm still going to, of course, flour our counter. And we're gonna roll these into 2 different rectangles. The first is gonna be a 12 by 15 inch rectangle. The second one's gonna be a 20 by 9. But we're gonna start with our 12 by 15. This recipe is great practice for rolling out pie dough. You're gonna master this in no time. And if at any point you find that the dough is a little bit too soft and difficult to work with, You can pop it back in the fridge for a few minutes until it firms up. 15 by 12. Perfect. Our dough is ready. So once again, we're going to roll the dough across the rolling pin. I have my prepared pan. Now for this first rectangle, what we've done here is we've created the length for the short side of our rim baking sheet. So we'll top this with parchment. So now we can roll our final piece of pie dough so that it's the length of the long sides for our lattice crust. For our final rectangle, we're looking for 20 inches by 9 inches. You'll notice when you're starting to roll out your piece of pie dough that it's the best time to really establish the corners of the rectangle. And once you establish those corners from the beginning, you can easily continue to roll out your dough to the appropriate size. Now you'll see as I'm rolling this out, we're kind of losing this corner here. So I'm just going to rotate it and we're going to roll the dough upwards to re-establish that corner. And you can use your hands to shape it a little bit. You just don't want to stretch the dough, so be very careful. We have 9 inches wide and we're looking for 20 inches long. Perfect. And now we can transfer this to our sheet pan. I'm going to cover our dough with plastic and transfer it to the fridge until the dough is firm but pliable, about 10 minutes. Our other doughs should be chilled and ready to go so we can start on the base of our pie. The first thing I'm going to do is take our plastic wrap off of our sheet pan because we're going to use this again later. And now we're going to shimmy our 2 doughs out of the rim baking sheet. Pretty easy to do since it's nice and chilled. This is the baking sheet we're going to build our pie in, so I do want to give it a quick wipe with some paper towels, any of that excess flour, and we're also going to spray it with some vegetable oil spray. We're going to build this one piece at a time. So I'm going to take one of our doughs and roll it over our rolling pin, and you can see that this dough is pliable but not too soft. So now we're going to unroll it across half of the sheet pan, leaving a 2-inch overhang on all 3 sides here. And now we'll do the same thing with the second piece. And you can see how much easier this is to do with 2 separate pieces rather than one large piece of pie dough. So again, we're gonna unroll it. Now it's still nice and pliable, which is great because now we can adjust as we need to. We're only looking for about 1/2 inch in the center of an overlap. We roll these doughs out generously because we really want to make sure that we have enough overhang of our dough, since later on we're going to connect the lattice crust to the bottom crust. So now that we have our dough, we want to ease it into the pan. So I'm going to pick up the dough with my right hand and pressing it into the edges. So by lifting the dough and letting it fall into the rim baking sheet, we're not stretching the dough and we're making sure that that dough is nice and flush with the bottom of the baking sheet. The next thing we need to do is seal the 2 pieces of dough together, which is very easy to do. It's just a little bit of water and a pastry brush. So we're gonna lift up the top piece of dough and brush it with water. This is going to create kind of like a glue. Work our way down the center. And you'll see it's important that there's about 1/2 inch of an overlap because we don't want the center to be too thick. But now that we have our glue, we can press it down with our fingers to help even it out and make sure that they're fully sealed. You also want to make sure you get up on that lip there. You'll see that we have 2 inches of an overhang. We don't want to trim this dough just yet. We're going to do that a bit later. So now I'm going to cover this loosely with plastic wrap and put it back into the refrigerator until it's chilled and firm, which should take about 30 minutes. We're now ready to cut our lattice strips. So I've removed those top crusts from the refrigerator. What we're looking for is 1.5 inch wide strips. So we're going to start with our longer piece. This is our 20 by 9 inch rectangle. I'm just going to use my pizza wheel to score the dough so that I have an idea as to where we're going to cut this. You could use a pizza wheel, a fluted wheel, or even a paring knife to do this. And now that I have my dough scored, I can use my ruler as a guide to make sure we get nice straight strips. I actually want to keep this parchment paper, so I'm going to shimmy the dough onto the counter because we don't want the pizza cutter to cut through the parchment. And in terms of the long strips for the lattice, we're looking for 5 pieces. So you're probably going to have extra, but just cut it from end to end, and so you can use your 5 best looking strips when we assemble the pie later on. I'm using my hand to gently press on the ruler as I pull down the pizza wheel, just to make sure that the ruler doesn't slide around and we can keep a nice straight line. And then we'll transfer our strips right back to our parchment paper. And now we're ready to cut the other rectangle. So I learned my lesson the first time. I'm now going to shimmy the dough off of the parchment to preserve it. And I'll place this right on top of our long strips. And now we're going to cut our short strips. So again, 1.5 inches wide, For the long lattice strips, we wanted 5 pieces. For the shorter strips, we want 7. So again, you might have an extra or 2, but after you cut them all, you can pick your favorites. All right, so we'll transfer our lattice strips back to the parchment. Now I'll loosely cover our lattice strips with plastic wrap, put it back into the refrigerator until it's firm, which should take 30 minutes. It's time to get started with our peaches because this is a peach slab pie after all. And as you can see, we're not skimping on fruit here. We have a whopping 6 pounds of fresh peaches. I prepared most of the peaches already, but we'll do some together as well. The first thing we want to do is peel our peaches. When you're looking for peaches to use for this pie, you want to make sure that they are ripe but firm, which is exactly what I have here. That's going to make it easier to peel. If your peaches have been ripening a little too long and they're extra soft, you can blanch them and shock them, and then you can peel them easily. In fact, we have a step-by-step video in this class to show you just how to do that. But we're just going to peel these with a vegetable peeler. And you could use a serrated peeler, or I'm using a Y peeler. The skin of the peach can be relatively tough no matter how long we bake these, so that's why we want to get rid of it. And also the skin can be kind of fuzzy and you don't really want that texture in your peach filling. The peaches I'm using today are known as cling peaches, where the flesh of the peach clings to that center pit, and that can be kind of challenging to work with. I'm going to walk you through how I like to approach the cling peaches in order to cut them into 1/2-inch slices. I have my paring knife. I'm going to roll the peach around. We cut it in half one way, and now we'll cut it in half the other way. Same process. And now you can see we have these 4 cuts into our peach. And I'm looking to get about 3 slices per quarter of the peach. So kind of like the way that you would segment an orange. I'm going to take my knife and pop it right out. And then once you get that first slice out, the rest come out much easier. You can see where that pit is and just cut right underneath the slice so it comes right out. And once you get your segment with your paring knife, rather than pulling on the segment with the knife itself and risking hurting yourself, you can just use your fingers. Be very careful when you're doing this. You don't have to push too hard because the flesh is soft enough. So now I'm just going to finish prepping our last 2 peaches and then we can move on with our filling. Our peaches are all prepared, and as I mentioned, we cut them into 1/2-inch slices. Now you don't want to cut your peaches too thin because once you cut into a peach, it starts to release its moisture. And if the pieces are too small, they're going to get really mushy as they bake in the pie. When the peaches release all that moisture in the oven, we want to make sure that we can thicken it so it's more of a syrupy consistency, which is why we're going to introduce tapioca. This is instant tapioca. We love to use instant tapioca in our pie fillings because it's neutral tasting, it dissolves easily when it's baked, and it's also not going to dampen the flavor of the fruit. I'm using 1/3 cup of instant tapioca, and as you can see, the granules of the tapioca are pretty big, so we actually want to grind these ourselves so that they're evenly dispersed amongst the peaches. I'm going to use my spice grinder. You don't want to overcrowd your spice grinder when you're grinding your tapioca, so I'm going to pour about half right in here, and we'll give it a whirl. It's good to give it a shake so that you can make sure that it grinds nice and evenly. And I'll transfer this to our bowl. You can really see the difference. It looks like granulated sugar at this point. All right, so now we'll add our other half. Now, if you're really into pie baking, you can grind a bunch of tapioca and store it in an airtight container for up to 6 months. So if you want to do this ahead of time, keep it in your pantry. You'll be ready for more pies. To our tapioca, I'm going to add 1 cup of granulated sugar, a 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. It's going to add some real pleasant warmth to the peaches, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and an 1/8 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. Just going to give this a whisk, make sure it's evenly combined. Now, if you had a bowl big enough for all 6 pounds of your peaches, you could create this sugar mixture in the base of your very large bowl and toss all of your peaches to combine them. But I do not have a bowl that large, so I put my peaches into 2 bowls. So I'll pour half of our sugar mixture over half of our peaches and the rest on the other half. I have a nice big spoon here. We want to make sure that the sugar mixture and especially that tapioca is very evenly distributed across the peaches. We have just a couple ingredients left, starting with 2 teaspoons of freshly grated lemon zest. This is just a wonderful bright pop of lemon flavor. It's going to highlight the sweetness of the peaches and the pie filling, as well as 2 tablespoons of freshly squeezed lemon juice. So in this case, this would be 1 tablespoon per bowl. And again, we'll give this a nice toss. You can already see that the sugar is starting to dissolve on the peaches. Good things are happening. All right, our filling is all ready to go, so we can start to assemble our slab pie. We have our peaches, we have our chilled bottom crust, and we have our lattice strips out on the counter. The longer your pie dough sits in the refrigerator, the more firm it's going to get. So if it's been longer than 30 minutes, you want to let it sit on the counter for a little while until they start to soften so that they're nice and pliable and they don't break. The first thing we want to do is add our peaches to the base of our pie. As you can see, we are clearly not skimping on peach flavor with all of this filling that we have. It's going to be so good. You want to spread your peaches out nice and evenly so that the lattice crust can sit nice and even on top of the peaches. So now we can get started on our lattice crust. And we're going to work with the long pieces first. We're going to start by laying this across the center of the pie. So again, we want 5 pieces, so take the 5 best looking ones. Starting in the center is going to allow you to make the spaces more even because we're going to put 2 more strips on either side of the center. So now we're ready to start working with our short pieces. So we're going to start with the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th long piece, and we're going to fold them back a little more than halfway. And this is why you can see how important it is that the pieces are pliable. Otherwise they would break when we folded them back. And now I'll take one of our short pieces, lay it right across the center, and now we're going to unfold the long pieces. So now we're going to fold back the 2nd and the 4th long strip, and we're leaving about a 1/2 inch here. And you can start to see how this is coming together. We'll repeat the process with the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th long piece. Again, a 1/2 inch of a difference here. Unfold. And now we'll fold back the 2nd and the 4th long piece. And unfold. We're going to repeat the process on the other half of the pie. So we're going to go back to the 2nd and the 4th long piece, fold these back, take a strip, unfold it, and now we'll fold back the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th again. And for our last piece, we'll go back to the 2nd and the 4th. Look at that! Not only does the lattice crust look beautiful, but all of these holes and the gaps within the lattice top serves a purpose. The holes within the lattice crust are going to allow evaporation to happen, which means that that juice is going to get nice and thick and be the perfect consistency. At this point, you can readjust as you need to if you need to slide any of your strips a certain way, just to make sure that they're all evenly spaced apart. Now we're ready to trim the edges of the pie. And if you need to feel for the edge with your thumb, just to see where you're at, we're looking for a 1/2 inch of an overhang. And then at that point, you can just take kitchen shears and give it a little haircut. You could also trim your pie crust with a paring knife, but I find that kitchen shears make this a lot easier and safer. And just remember while you're trimming your pie dough that you can always go back and trim more if this is your first time or your second time. You know, no one's perfect. The corners of the rim baking sheet are rounded, so I am cutting in a rounded motion to highlight those. Haircut achieved. Now we want to pinch the lattice crust to the base to seal them. So I'm going to take my thumb, press them together. Just going to make sure that this holds in all the juices as this bakes. Just making sure that all of our lattice has been sealed to the bottom, because now we're ready to tuck our pie dough. So we're going to start at the corner. This is really why we want to have that overhang, because this is going to give us kind of a wall around the edge of the pie. So what we're doing here is we're just tucking the dough under itself. As we're tucking it under, we're letting that dough rest right on the edge of the rim baking sheet, so it kind of acts like a wall. The next thing we want to do is crimp the edges. Now there are many ways that you could crimp, but that's essentially giving it a nice tight seal. So you could use the back of a fork, you could use a spoon, but my preferred method is to just use my hands. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my index finger of my left hand and the thumb and the index finger of my right hand, and I'm just going to form a bit of a triangle and spacing these evenly apart. We're gonna work our way around. This just gives it a nice design, but it also does help to confirm that those pie crusts are gonna be sealed together. And you wanna make sure that your crimps are still sitting up on the edge of the rim baking sheet so that they don't slump into the pan after you bake your pie. Kind of giving it a squeeze with my right hand to really define that triangular shape. And just like with every step of this pie making process, especially if this is your first time making a lattice crust, you find that the dough is getting too soft, just pop it back in the fridge until it firms up. Before we get our beautiful pie into the oven, we first want to brush it with an egg wash. So I have 1 large egg that I've beaten slightly with a fork, and I'm just going to add 1 tablespoon of water. This just helps to thin out the egg so that it can be evenly distributed across the top of the crust. And we'll whisk this with a fork, make sure it's nice and combined. Grab my pastry brush, and we're gonna brush across the edges as well as the lattice top. So anywhere you see pie crust, give it a brush. This egg wash is gonna make sure that the top crust bakes up super golden brown and is nice and shiny. But if you wanted to give it a little extra razzle-dazzle, you could even sprinkle on some sugar on top. But honestly, it doesn't even need it. The lattice crust speaks for itself here. Got a nice even layer of our egg wash. So we are finally ready for the oven. I have my oven heated to 375 degrees with the racks in the lower position and the lower middle position. I'm going to place a piece of aluminum foil on the lower rack to catch any potential drips as the pie bakes, and we're going to place the pie on the lower middle rack. We're going to bake our pie for an hour to an hour and a quarter until our crust is nice and deep golden brown and the filling starts to bubble. I'm going to make sure that I rotate the pan halfway through baking. How beautiful is this pie? My goodness. The crust is deep golden brown, our filling was bubbling. Unfortunately, we can't eat this just yet. We do need to let it sit and cool until the filling is just set, which would take 2 hours. Our pie is fully cooled and we can see that our filling is nice and set, which means a very exciting thing. It's time to cut into the pie. This pie serves 18 to 24 people, so you want to cut this in either 3 or 4 rows of 6. So I'm just going to take my chef's knife, making sure to get past the bottom crust. I'm just going to cut a couple slices to start. 1 for me and the second for me. I'll use my pie server to get under the slab. Now it's time to take a bite. The crust is so flaky, the filling is the perfect consistency, and it is so darn peachy. After cutting into this peach-filled head turner, you should feel so proud of what you've accomplished. A base sturdy enough to hold a generous amount of fresh peaches, a thickened but not gloppy filling that doesn't sog out your crust, and a sophisticated lattice crust that's worthy of a professional bake shop. What an achievement! Now that you know how to make a slab pie, you're ready to take the next step. And with ATK classes, you'll get access to a wide variety of lessons filled with masterful techniques, helpful videos, and step-by-step photos. From knife skills and making hand-rolled pasta, to baking and frosting incredible cakes, and so much more. Download the America's Test Kitchen app and start learning with ATK classes today.